Hello viewers. Well, welcome to my Bahrain Grand Prix blog then. It's certainly been a lot of controversy on the lead up to this race, but we'll talk a bit about that later. The race itself anyway, looking at the early practice sessions, obviously Sebastian Vettel was back on the pace, wasn't he? The Red Bull, seemed to have sorted out their problems, and come from almost nowhere, from qualifying in 11th in China to pole position in Bahrain. And it really shows how the tyres have made a sort of difference to them and learning how their cars are working. We're still learning in these early races how these new cars work and how the tyres work and everything else. And the Lotus was pretty quick as well. But obviously, his biggest competition was Lewis Hamilton and, Rosberg, really. I mean, because Rosberg was so quick in China. Could they do it again? Was it just a flash in the pan? Qualifying, Rosberg clearly made a mistake on a couple of corners, especially the final corner. And that obviously cost him a fair bit of time and left him down in 5th place. Lewis Hamilton not able to match Sebastian Vettel, but you're always remembering that these cars are setting themselves up for the race. So even though the expectation was definitely that the McLaren would be quicker in the race than perhaps the Red Bulls, and we'll wait and see. But a clean getaway for Sebastian Vettel, wasn't it? I mean, it's a very easy sort of run for him. Lewis in 2nd place, Jensen struggling a little bit at the start. It was a bit all over the place for the midfield. I mean, it really is a very challenging sort of circuit to get around those first few corners. I have to say, they're very, very tight for that field, and they all stick very close together as well. But on the whole, I think the surprise of the day has to be the Lotus. The performance of the Lotus, Grosjean at first, a long way ahead, then Kimi coming back through the field, catching up with Grosjean. And really, that was the critical time of the whole race. Kimi was running somewhere around a 1:38.9, 1:39 second lap. Grosjean was running a 1 minute 40 second lap, and the team didn't say anything to let Kimi pass. And some people might say, oh, well, I don't think they should. I personally felt that at the time, watching it, Kimi's coming up a second a lap quicker than Grosjean. Grosjean needs to let him by. Kimi can win this race today comfortably. And instead he lost about 6 or 7 seconds behind Grosjean in just those next few laps, and that ended up costing Kimi the race. So it's a bit of a shame from Lotus that they didn't, take that decision on board. It's easy to say afterwards, oh, well, we leave it to the drivers, but honestly, as a team that needs the wins, that needs to get up there, neither of them are probably going to be winning the Drivers' Championship. It's a real opportunity for them because the tyres are working. And on the circuit, they really had a great balance on the tyres, whether it's because the temperatures were lower, whether it was because they've understood the Pirellis on that type of surface, who knows. But Sebastian Vettel, unfortunately, it was all too easy for him, just pushing away ahead. And there has to be a lot of focus, because when you're leading, you're needing to put in those perfect laps. We don't know what he was contending with in the car. Meanwhile, the McLarens were performing very poorly, burning up their rear tyres. Quite a strange one, isn't it? You watch the race, and this car was fantastic a couple of races ago. It has perfect balance. And then you come to the another Grand Prix, and suddenly the speed's just gone from it. I mean, I remember seeing this years ago, actually, when I went to the British Grand Prix in '98, and Damon Hill was doing okay, I think, on qualifying, and then in the race was nowhere and had a crash and everything else. And you think, how can a car go from doing, say, a lap time one day to 2 seconds a lap slower the next day? It's quite strange how you see that with the track evolution and everything else, and temperature making such a huge difference. And a lot of that's down to the way the teams prepare the car. They alter the camber and how to generate heat in the tyres, and if they get that slightly wrong, then your tyres are going to overheat in the wrong way and everything else. Now, the big incidents of the day obviously were Nico Rosberg pulling out on Lewis Hamilton. Rosberg hasn't got a penalty, and I can see why, honestly. Rosberg made one move. Hamilton was on the left-hand side of the track. He moved at the same time as Rosberg. Rosberg said, you're not coming in on that side. It's as simple as that. The same with Alonso. It looks very spectacular, but for a lot of racing fans, if you watch the GP2 race, the same thing happened the day before, where a guy went round on the outside concrete and then hit the brake and overtook 3 cars into the next corner. So it wasn't as if the F1 drivers hadn't seen someone already do that and didn't know it was going to be an issue. But Rosberg made the decision to block that inside line every time, and that was his right to do so. So it looks more dramatic on camera. I suppose on camera you look at it a little bit like the incident with, say, Michael Schumacher in Hungary and Rubens Barrichello a couple of years ago. But in reality, this wasn't like that. I mean, there was a car's width with the wall there, but there wasn't on the track, and you're not allowed to overtake someone when you're off the track. So it was a bit of a racing incident, and I'm glad that it's not come to too much for Nico. I was expecting a grid placement penalty, honestly, for the next race, but as it happens, it doesn't seem like there'll be a problem. McLaren, of course, problem with the pit stops for Lewis. Same thing as Jensen in China, really. They've had the problem with this wheel gun. This is my little rant now. It does frustrate me when people blame the mechanics and say the mechanics did a terrible job. You know, Lewis in the pits there nodding his head like, no, just for the camera. Not necessary from Lewis. Don't need to do that. You know, these guys work 19-hour days to make a great racing car for you. They leave their families and they work very, very long hours. A car comes in the pits with steaming hot wheels and tyres, and obviously there's all types of contraction and everything else in the different types of materials, and for whatever reason the threads have got caught on the wheels. I wouldn't know the reason for that. McLaren need to study to find out the reason for it, and I'm sure they'll fix it. Both cars, it's the same wheel, whether that's down to the way the load is working and there's a lot of load going onto that particular wheel, or the way the car was set up. Who knows? It might be down to the heat. I mean, they're saying they're overheating their rears. Could be something like that. I mean, I wouldn't know, but I do think that it's harsh when people blame the mechanics. You know, they work very hard, and if you have a technical failure on the car, it doesn't matter who's going to be on that gun, it's going to be a bit of a problem getting the car out. Unfortunately, it ruined Lewis's race. Jensen cracked his exhaust, blew his tyre for him at the end. Ferrari struggling a great deal. You'd have to say it was a better run for Massa. I say better run, I mean it was better midfield for him. Fernando struggled a lot, didn't he, in this race. Paul di Resta did very well in his strategy. I have to say, a good race from him. He kept that car going in a straight line all the way round, and did some decent overtakes when he needed to as well. Certainly there was a big difference between tyres working and not working. Michael Schumacher getting out of the car afterwards and saying just how unhappy he was with the tyres and the way they would the degradation and everything else, and how he was having to manage them rather than push flat out. So it's interesting how these new Pirellis are working with drivers not feeling that they ever really get the most out of them. With drivers not really feeling like they ever get the most out of them. And I think it's interesting to see how unhappy he was with the degradation for the tyres, and how he would like to see that situation improved. And that's something I'm going to speak to. If I get the chance to talk to Anthony Davidson again at some point, I will ask him about tyre degradation, about whether it's possible they can create the tyres that don't create as many marbles, because the marbles are making it really difficult offline. We want tyres to degrade, but sometimes you'll get a field of marbles and sometimes you won't. So it's quite interesting depending on the abrasiveness of the track surface or the chemical composition of the tyre. So overall then, I thought the race was pretty good fun for what it was. I mean, compared to some Bahrain Grand Prix, it wasn't too bad actually. Some of them have been pretty boring over the years. The DRS really helped with some overtaking opportunities. Good results for Sebastian Vettel. Unlucky for Kimi Räikkönen, but a good result for the Lotus team. 2 guys on the podium. McLaren go away with a lot to think about. Ferrari struggling, Sauber not where they've been, Williams a little bit all over the place, Daniel Ricciardo fantastic qualifying, shame it didn't turn out for him in the race, and of course Mercedes a bit of a missed opportunity, but I'm sure they'll be back at Barcelona because they've got that super DRS system and that's going to help them an awful lot. And for the back teams, well, they did okay. K2M are trying to punch a little bit above their weight, but they're just not getting into the mix at the moment, and you can see from that from the team points and everything else. But overall, that's it now for the away races. We come to Europe in a few weeks' time after the Mugello test, and then we'll start seeing the new bits on the cars, and the season will really take shape. And finally, I think a note on whether the Grand Prix should have taken place or not. Do you know, a lot of F1 journalists and news journalists and everything else jump on a bandwagon when they see a sport is taking place in a country, and they suddenly have a big issue about it. And I think a lot of the people watching the YouTube videos, including myself, simply don't know enough to make a decision as to whether something should or should not take place. And they ask the drivers. The drivers aren't the politicians. They don't know the 100 years of history behind Bahrain. Nobody had a problem with Bahrain 4 years ago when it was taking place, and I'm sure the same things were going on in the country then that are going on now. You know, we don't know what the vast populace think and everything else, but I hope whatever is going on in the country, that the news and the discussion about it helps to resolve those matters. But obviously the best way to resolve them is for the political discussion and to keep that in the news and people's eyes of what's actually happening in different countries and the strife for people abroad. But overall, I think it's interesting. I think F1 has been to a lot of different places over the years, and people have mentioned South Africa and during the apartheid and everything else. And I think that people have always said that sport should stay separate, and I think it is for the drivers. I think, like you say, we don't all know what goes on. I think it's just about following the sport and enjoying the sport, and that was the Grand Prix for this year, and to be honest, it was a good race as well. So we move on away from Australia, Malaysia, China and Bahrain to Barcelona in a few weeks' time, and I look forward to that race as well, and I look forward to receiving your feedback. There's only so much I can do on one of these reports. I would like to do these reports live as a live stream. And hopefully at some point we'll get to that point where I can actually interview some racing drivers and some F1 editors as well. But as ever, viewers, that's it from me for now, and there'll be more very soon.